They never know what they're going to be. Are they going to be area masturbator? These people didn't know they were going to be in the Onion every week for the rest of their lives.
Welcome to Log Off. Everyone has an internet story to tell, and today we're hearing from Scott Dikkers. Scott is the founding editor of The Onion and its longest-serving editor-in-chief. His comic strip, Jim's Journal, was the inspiration for Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He's got a bunch of books to his name. He's got a Peabody. He's got a Thurber. He's got a big pile of Webby Awards. I'm excited to talk to him about all that, plus his crusade to make the world a funnier place with his How to Write Funny book series and online empire. But first, Scott, let's start this podcast the way we always do. At the beginning, what is your earliest internet memory?
That's a good question. I think it was getting one of the Onion stories stolen and passed around on email and having it go viral. That was what viral meant back then. It was someone emails something and people copy it and email it to their friends. And it was a story from the Onion that somebody wrote out verbatim and emailed. And it got to be this viral success, but it didn't have the Onion's name on it. It didn't have our credit. And so it got all this attention. The guys on that NPR show, Car Talk, read it on their show and just laughed and read it. And they were like, I wish we knew who wrote it. Who wrote this? You know, no idea. And it was actually pretty heartbreaking and frustrating. We called the show. They gave us all the credit the following week. And we decided, you know what, we should make a website, because there are these new things now called websites where you can put your stuff up on the computer and people can see it and it's not emailed. And so we looked into that and we did it. And the Onion was, I believe, the world's first humor website.
I was wondering if that was a sarcastic subtitle to the website. That's amazing that it actually...
No, it's...
Okay. So yeah, we'll get to the internet-y parts that align more with the show's mission. But The Onion was famously started as a black and white weekly in Madison, Wisconsin. When you think back to those early analog years, like what kind of memories pop into your head?
Oh, so many. The smell of the newsprint, you know, being at the printer and smelling, you know, hearing those loud machines and meeting like the guys who worked at the printer and the delivery guys and the trucks. You know, it's just like all this behind the curtain stuff that is totally beyond our vision now. Yeah, and I just remember having a great time and it being a real scrappy enterprise and being on the streets in Madison and like trying to get a sense of whether people were picking it up, whether they were liking it. Yeah, that was fun times.
You paint a really interesting and vivid picture of that kind of stuff in some of your books, like How to Write Funny and Outrageous Marketing. One of the things I think is really interesting about your writer's room, or I guess it's kind of like a policy for The Onion, was the no names, no credit policy. Can you explain like what that is and why it worked so well?
Yeah. So the two guys who founded The Onion, Tim Keck and Chris Johnson, in the first year, they were kind of on the track to make themselves sort of like celebrities, comedy celebrities in their own newspaper, much like Doug Kinney had done in the Harvard Lampoon, much like a lot of the artists and editors did at Mad Magazine. And it was a mistake. And I knew it was a mistake. And I tried to tell them that. And when I bought it from them after a year, they sold it to me a year after starting it up. I decided no names. So the reason I did that was because I saw how when somebody like Doug Kinney left the National Lampoon, everybody noticed and everybody was like, oh, it's not going to be funny anymore. And like it really hurt. And the worst example of that was Spy Magazine, when Spy Magazine got sold to some rich investor and everybody knew that he didn't keep Graydon Carter and Kurt Anderson, the two geniuses who founded it, on staff. And so everybody was like, you know, given up on Spy Magazine. And it went out of business like within a year. Like everybody knew. So I wanted The Onion to be the brand that survived because people knew and loved the brand, not any individual people associated with the brand. And so that was a huge detriment to me because I had this chance to build my own platform and couldn't take it because I was just as anonymous as everybody else. I would occasionally do media or interviews, but I would also send other writers out to do media and interviews. So keep the world confused about who's in charge, who's running this thing, whatever the case. And it worked, because in 2012, when the Onion moved its offices from New York to Chicago, there was a big schism, and a lot of the New York writers didn't want to move, and they revolted, and we lost like 80% of our staff. And it was such a blip in the news world of Onion fans, like nobody ever knew, because nothing changed with the Onion. And if we had gone that route of making celebrities out of writers, that would have been a disaster. The Onion would not have survived that.
So eventually, I think it was around 96, I guess the impetus was that NPR story, or the email that went around and then eventually got read on NPR. You decided to launch the website. Can you explain what it was like getting that website launched and publishing satire on the early internet?
Yeah, I believe it was 95. And yeah, I remember we found a guy who was a local guy who had some servers in his basement. Mm-hmm. And he said he could register theonion.com for us with Internic, like the company that gives out the name. There was no GoDaddy. There was none of those services yet. And so he got us theonion.com, and it cost us $400 just to get the domain. And I remember visiting him in his little basement, and it was just like 3 or 4 servers. And then we had one of our layout guys, designer, figure out what it looked like. It basically took what was in the paper and put it on the computer. And we didn't really think anything of it. And then we started getting attention. Like, fan letters started rolling in from all over the world. The New Yorker wrote this glowing review of us. It was like all of a sudden, it was like, people saw what we were doing for the first time in like 10, it wasn't quite 10 years, like 8 years. We'd been doing this, 7. And we had been so hungry to get more attention and to grow. And this was like a real quantum leap. It was very exciting.
So eventually you make your way to New York. I think you threw a Welcome to New York party on September 10th, 2001. And then the next day, the world changed forever, and it definitely changed the trajectory of The Onion, which hadn't done much with current events to that point. Can you talk about your mindset going into that next issue?
Yeah, so I wasn't there for that. I took one of my many hiatuses. But I can tell you that we definitely had this idea that we wanted everything to be as evergreen as possible. So it seemed like The Onion was parodying current events, but it was rare that we would do a joke about a specific news piece or item. On rare occasion, we would do it. And so we had just finished the book Our Dumb Century, which was a parody of one of those century retrospective books, front pages of The Onion laid out for 100 years. And we had to make fun of all the main news events of the century, as if that was something The Onion did. But it really wasn't something we did. And even after the 9/11 issue, we didn't do that. It wasn't until about 2013 that we decided, we should start making jokes specifically about current events. And because we knew that that's what the readers were hungry for, a big thing would happen in the news and everybody would say, I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do with this. And I would always be thinking, well, we never do anything with this stuff. What are you thinking? We just do these generic stories about, guns or abortion or presidents doing silly things, never any specific news item. So we started doing it, and we started acting more like a weekly newspaper with daily meetings, what's in the news today, and then making jokes about that. And our readership multiplied by a factor of 3. It was like this space that people always thought we were in, but we never occupied. And we just decided, okay, we're moving into that space. And it was smart. We still, after that point, continued to do the evergreen stuff, though, too, because that's fun.
I think you've said in your book, like that 9/11 issue was one of your proudest moments, just seeing that come out. What was the reaction like?
The writers were really scared of putting it out. And the first thing they got was like a big fax from somebody saying that this had been a big mistake. And they were like, uh-oh, here it comes. We're in deep trouble. And then the positive accolades started to come in. And people in New York especially were feeling like, oh, my God, this is just what we needed. So many people had been saying comedy is dead. You can't make jokes anymore. couple of stand-ups got kicked off stage for trying to make jokes about it. But the Onion writers had gotten so good at making the right joke about a very serious current event after doing Our Dumb Century that they really knew how to do it. You don't make fun of victims. You make fun of the powerful and not the weak. And, you find the humor that way. And it was like a healing balm. We always knew that comedy was like a coping mechanism and a way to heal. The readers had never really seen it be delivered with that kind of power before. So yeah, I was just immensely proud of Rob and Carol and Todd, John, Tim, everybody who did that issue.
How do you feel when you hear like common internet refrains like "The Onion is undefeated" or "The Onion doesn't miss"? Is that like 100% a point of pride, or do you think about times when maybe The Onion actually did fall short?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely remember a lot of misfires and mistakes. I don't think you can do comedy for, what has it been, almost 35 years? No, exactly 35 years, without making some terrible blunders, And yeah, we got plenty. We almost got sued a lot of the times that we made those mistakes. Other times it was just, egg on our face. Other times angry letters. Other times just like a private embarrassment because it's like, that could have been so much better, But hopefully the good stuff outweighs the bad. And that's generally how it works. People remember the funny stuff. So you don't sweat the stuff that didn't work. And you learn too, like most of the worst stuff is early. We got better and learned and came up with a system where we didn't do that as much.
One thing at The Onion that's been a constant for as long as I can remember is the American Voices section with, it's like the fake man on the street quotes. And it's a mix of the same 6 headshots over and over again. Did The Onion ever hear from those people like after they became weirdly internet famous?
Yeah, so that feature started from issue 1, and it was called What Do You Think? And it was a parody of those real things they do in a lot of city papers. Well, they'll have 3 people from the street ask what they think about a current issue, and they'll put it on the editorial letters page or whatever. And I thought it'd be really funny to just do the same people every week. And so we had the same 6 people for a few years, and they were all looked like college students because the Onion was a college newspaper. Starting about when we went online, I decided we need to have these be adults. So we took some pictures of people the same way we take pictures of anybody for the Onion. We would go out and on the street in front of the office and just see somebody and say, oh, that person looks good. Hey, do you want to be in the Onion? And they're like, yeah. And then take their picture, have them sign a blanket release form, and then file it away. And they never know what they're going to be. Are they going to be area masturbator? Are they going to be, local pedophile? Who knows? And so these people didn't know they were going to be in the Onion every week for the rest of their lives. And one of them is a UPS driver, and he almost got fired for some of the incendiary things that he said in the Onion over the years. And I ran into one of them when I gave a talk somewhere. She came up to me after the talk and said, do I look familiar to you? And I was like, yes, you do. And she said it was a pure delight to her to be a celebrity from the Onion, that she gets recognized all the time. And I have no idea about the other people.
It's amazing. This is probably like picking your favorite child, but do you have a favorite Onion headline that pops into your head?
I always think of my favorite story. So my favorite headline is probably this one when George W. Bush finally won the Supreme Court case and, was made president over Al Gore. The headline was Bush, our long national nightmare of peace and prosperity is finally over. It was just very prescient and very funny. And the story was brilliant. Todd Hanson wrote it. And it was written about in a New York Times editorial a few years later, where they said, how did the Onion know exactly what George W. Bush was going to do as president? It laid out exactly what was going to happen, that he was going to find a country, didn't matter where, and he was going to start a war, and he was going to bankrupt the country, all this stuff. There are funnier ones that I like. I like Clinton Found Alive. That was one of my favorite ones. It was just one of those pictures with a headline, no story, and it was a picture of Bill Clinton with a beard and with like a ragged clothes, as if he'd been on a desert island. Gore releases 3 more hostages was another one with Al Gore. One of my favorites was a picture of like a young white news anchor, good-looking guy, and the headline was "News anchor happy as hell, gonna take it for a long, long time," which is a play on that catchphrase from Network, and I just thought it was brilliant.
I think my favorite is actually from the 9/11 era. Not knowing what else to do, woman bakes American flag cake. It's just perfect.
Yeah, that's one of Carol's. It's a brilliant headline.
So The Onion didn't invent satire, obviously, but the formula has been often imitated. Do you think anyone else has kind of entered that pantheon, or are there satirical websites you enjoy consuming?
Boy, that's a good question. Most of the satirical stuff I enjoy is historical. Mm-hmm. I don't know of too much now. I thought a lot of the Daily Show that Jon Stewart did was great, and it's exciting that he's back one day a week now. I watched his show, and I thought Trevor Noah was great, like super skilled. But there's something that happens when somebody like, I don't know, Trevor Noah is just so slick and so likable. Jon Stewart really has an edge where he lets himself play the boob. Mm-hmm. You know, he lets you laugh at him, but while also being smart. Trevor Noah kind of had this this veneer of I'm too cool to play stupid or whatever. And I laughed, like for the first time in many years watching The Daily Show, I actually laughed. So yeah, I think Jon Stewart is great. I thought The Colbert Show was absolutely brilliant from start to finish. That was some great satire. Some of my favorite satire is Mark Twain, I would have to say. Going back, Leonard Wibberley, one of my favorite satirists. Monty Python, can't beat them.
When you see satire done poorly or it makes you cringe, what is the feedback you most commonly want to deliver?
Nowadays, the most common feedback I deliver is don't do fake news. What are you doing? It's a crowded mm-hmm. space. Everybody's doing it. Do something else. Doesn't have to be fake news. Yeah, by far, that's what I say.
That's a pretty good segue into what you're doing with How to Write Funny. It started as a single book, then became a series, became a podcast. Now you've developed into online courses. What made you want to teach all this stuff to other people instead of just hoarding the wisdom for yourself?
Good question. I was always the teacher, mentor guy at The Onion. I was the old man. I was always in charge of creative. And so I would always hire people who had no comedy experience, and I would teach them how to do it. And I would always try to teach them the fundamentals, not just how to do an Onion piece of comedy, but the fundamentals of comedy, so that when they left The Onion, which they all did, they could succeed in TV or books or whatever they wanted to do. And I felt like I really had that down. I felt like I really knew how to do that. And when I left The Onion for the final time in 2014, I felt this urge to write down what I knew, because there wasn't such a book. And when I was a kid starting out in comedy, I would have killed for a book like that explained the tricks and how to do everything. There wasn't anything like it. Yeah, it was kind of a risky move. I had never done a straight, nonfiction how-to book without any jokes. But I just laid it all out and I put it out there, and it felt pretty good. And I started teaching it at the Second City Training Center in Chicago, and set up a series of classes in partnership with The Onion. And yeah, I fell right into that because, like I said, it was what I had done at The Onion for so long. And it was one of my favorite parts of the job, actually, was training people.
If people want to jump into your stuff and make a serious run at writing comedy, where's the best place to start? Is it just the How to Write Funny book?
Yeah, I would say so, but there are cheaper and even easier ways to start. You can binge the podcast. They're all on YouTube. There are free books and free materials available at howtowritefunny.com. And that'll certainly get anybody started. The book, I would have to say, is kind of a deep dive, especially the series of books, But if you read, studied, and learned all 3 of the books, plus the 4th book, which is called How to Write Funny Characters, you'd be a master a master comedy professional. So everything's there. It's just a matter of how deep you want to dip your toes in.
Yeah. Know? I mean, we've touched on a handful of your books. Do you have a favorite one that you've published, whether it's that series or something that was under the Onion imprint?
That's funny you ask, because my favorite book is one that I published under a pen name a few years ago. And I'm going to tweak it and republish it under my name. But it's a novel about a guy who's moving backwards through time. Like time moves in reverse for him. So everybody perceives him as moving backwards. And he moves from the future to the past, just gradually. And I just love everything about it. And I'm rereading it now in order to figure out how I want to like edit it. And yeah, super excited about that one. Number 2, I would have to say, is Our Dumb Century, the Onion's first original book. Really put a lot of my heart and soul into that book. Worked with the amazing team of writers at The Onion. Very proud of it. Still stands up. If you want to learn the history of the 20th century, you could do worse. And yeah, those are definitely top 2.
Okay. All right, let's get into some of our internet questions we ask every single time. Our first one,
sure.
It's called Tab Check. It's a little feature where, we ask people how many tabs they have open in their browser of choice. So how many do you have?
I often get chided by people who catch a glance of my computer at just how many tabs I have open. So I have so many open that I can't count them. And I have several windows open, each with several tabs open. So I'm pretty much a nut when it comes to tabs. If you want an actual number, I don't know, 24, we'll say. Okay.
Is that like organized chaos? Like where everything is, or are you just shoving stuff off to the side and coming back to it later?
I have several tabs pinned in Chrome, and I know where they are. The rest are hodgepodge. And I do it because I'm in a hurry. Like I just need to find something, I open a new tab, I do it. And occasionally I'll just like erase a bunch because I don't care about them. But so there's a mix. Yeah.
Okay. When you open your social media apps, what are the algorithms feeding you right now?
My algorithms in social media feed me a lot of ads, a lot of ads for, hey, do you want to succeed on social media? But I feel like lately I've been getting a lot more stuff from the people who I actually follow and not stuff that's been selected for me from the larger algorithm. But to answer the question more broadly, I hardly ever open my computer or phone and go on social media. The only time I go on social media is to post or to respond to posts. Hardly ever just scroll through it.
It's a pretty healthy lifestyle.
It's an absolute time killer that literally gives me nothing.
Well, if you're not on social media, is there a corner of the internet that people might be surprised that you're interested in?
I really like this website. Let me see if it still exists, for Scrappy, a fake cartoon character from the 1930s. Well, I think he's fake.
It's not Scrappy.
Little Scrappy.
It's not Scrappy from Scooby-Doo,
yeah,
is it?
Scrappy. No. It's from the 30s. Oh. Scooby-Doo is from the 70s. Oh, no, Little Scrappy's a rapper, so that's the wrong Little Scrappy. But I love his website. It's just beautiful. I feel like it's fake. I don't believe there was ever a cartoon character in the 30s named Lil Scrappy. And somebody made a whole website devoted to him with fake comics and a fake history and everything else. And I just loved it. Oh, there it is. Scrappyland.com. It looks so authentic, but I've never been able to verify that it's real.
It does look real.
It sure looks real. Again, never been able to verify that. Yeah, that's so funny that's still around. And I also have never been able to figure out who put up that site, like who's in there. So another weird corner of the website, a weird corner of the internet I like to go to is, it's called joeythemidwife.com. David Reese created this. It's an advertising agency where you can pay Joey, the midwife, to make your content go viral. And it's just beautifully written, super funny. And the best part of it is the website looks terrible. It's just totally incompetent, old, awful. So it's a beautiful parody. David Reese is an unqualified genius.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can tell how old this is by how narrow it is. I mean,
Exactly.
a different time.
It fits on a Mac lunchbox. Yeah.
One interesting thing I've noticed about you and also read an article the other day is that you're not really a laugher. I don't know if that's just you're so sharpened when it comes to comedy that nothing can make you laugh. What is the last thing that actually made you laugh online?
Online? Well, I did watch that episode of The Daily Show that I mentioned and laughed at that. Before that, I don't know.
Amazing.
Friends invite me to their stand-up shows, and I always tell them, don't do that. I'm gonna be a blank void of a seat. I'm not gonna be laughing. But I did go to see Nick Griffin recently, who's one of my favorite, probably my absolute favorite stand-up comic at the moment. And I did laugh a few times because he's a genius. Yeah, I think it's just because I do humor for my job, so I see the code. But that makes it all the more pleasurable and joyful when something does make me laugh, because I think I've found something really special, you know.
That's great. All right, so let's get to the dark side. What is the most scarring moment on the internet, if you can bring yourself to disclose it?
The most scarring moment on the internet. This is not very exciting, but like whenever your website is down, nothing causes that deep pain in the pit of your stomach than going to your website and seeing like a 404 error or whatever, or a site not available. And one time people hacked a site of mine, blafo.com, and it was just unreached, you know, it was gone. They took everything down, and I had to painstakingly recreate everything. And that's probably the most scarring. Like I wake up in sweats thinking about that stuff sometimes.
How do you?
Because you trust the internet, you trust it to be there, but it's not paper, you know.
Yeah, and you don't even know who to yell at a lot of the times when something like that happens.
Nobody to yell at. It's like algorithms. Yeah, it's terrifying.
How do you pry yourself away from devices or log off? It sounds like you have a pretty healthy relationship with social media. Do you have any special tactics that might be helpful to others?
Oh, Ryan, I have so many tactics that I created this daily Substack newsletter to share them.
There we go.
Daily. I throw out tips, not just for like, you know, being productive and staying off social media, but how to be good on social media, how to muster the courage to do social media, how to write better, how to write funnier. But to answer your specific question, so my basic tactic is eating, I think, is the main thing. Like if I need to eat, I stop and I close the computer and I eat. So you got to eat, you know, 2 or 3 times a day. So that's definitely a good way to turn off the computer. Another way is with alarms. Like I use alarms a lot, so I know what I'm supposed to be doing when. And I set an alarm for this podcast so I wouldn't miss it. That's about it. Like there's really nothing in social media or on the internet that's so fascinating to me, unless I'm binging some show. You know, if there's some show that I'm stuck on, I'll watch that. But most shows don't really grip me. It's pretty easy to just close the computer and turn it off. I don't find it to be as addictive as it is for a lot of people.
I think you're blessed in that way. I think most people have a lot of trouble with it. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but
absolutely.
Yeah. Where do you think you would be without the internet?
I would probably be publishing a newspaper and books, and I probably would have gone into TV. The Onion had so many opportunities to do a TV show between 98, I would say, and 2008. So like that 10-year period. So many offers, so many agents, so many production companies flew me out to Hollywood, limoed me to their headquarters for a single meeting. I was just being wooed really heavily. And I didn't want it. I didn't want to do TV. I just thought, I heard so many stories about the writing rooms on The Simpsons and stuff like that, where they didn't have a life. They were just stuck in this room working 12-hour days every day. And I also just don't like the medium. I don't like that it's ads. So I never did it. But now that we have the internet and we have streaming where there are no ads, like I wouldn't mind doing a TV show. I wouldn't mind doing more movies and putting those online. So yeah, the internet changed my career trajectory quite a bit. It gave me a new medium to play in that I wouldn't have had. So it's been a real lifesaver.
Do you think eventually you will do some kind of streaming project?
Possibly.
Okay.
It really comes down to two things. Number one, I'm a total recluse and I don't like being in groups or hanging out with people. So when you do something like that, you normally have to hang out with a lot of people. So unless it was animated, I couldn't do it. Number two is the time involved. Like my time is spoken for. I really enjoy writing my books and doing my online courses and helping people get better at being funny. Like those are my passions. And so to do a show would feel like, okay, I'll do this fun thing, but it would have to be a pretty, attractive offer for me to do it. And who knows if I would ever get such a thing.
Are there people you see out in the world that have done things in entertainment or comedy that have either gone through your courses or done things with you in Chicago that you're particularly proud of?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm proud of all of them. Mm-hmm. So many people who went through my courses are writers and editors at The Onion. One of them is an editor at Clickhole. Nice. A lot of them started their own comedy publications. People who I mentored at The Onion have worked on just about every TV show you can imagine. Rob Siegel, who was my right-hand man for many years, wrote a bunch of movies. He wrote The Founder with Michael Keaton, which is a great movie. Will Graham, who I did the Onion News Network with, made the League of Their Own series on Amazon. Lang Fisher did Never Have I Ever on Netflix. Will Tracy, Seth Reese wrote The Menu. A bunch of writers from the Onion News Network have gone places. Chris Gethard was one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Aziz Ansari was like the Onion's first intern.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
Chris Kelly became the head writer of SNL, and I think the show was at its funniest when he was there. He used to write for us on the Onion News Network. He started as a locations guy, of all things. He just wanted to get his foot in the door to do some writing. So yeah, too many to even list them all. And I would also be loath to forget to mention Ben Carlin and Rich Dahm, who ran The Daily Show and The Colbert Report, really helped make those shows what they were. David Jaberbaum, who also worked on The Daily Show and has this amazing Twitter feed, The Tweet of God. He has like 6 million followers, and he's so brilliant that he can speak as God and people just believe it.
Incredible.
I think a lot of those 6 million people really think he's God.
All right. I will preface our last question by saying someone earlier on the podcast answered it by saying clickhole. What's the one thing on the internet you'd save if it all went goodbye tomorrow?
If I was in a hurry, it would be Amazon.
Okay.
If I had time to think about it, it would be scrappyland.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott, for this discussion and for your contributions to the internet and comedy. This is Ryan Perry saying log off. The internet will still be there when you get back.